So off by talking about two words. One of the words is the word half, and the other word is the word double. Right? So let's talk about a couple of questions. What would you say is the answer if I asked you what is half of 10? Okay, so if you take half of 10, if you had 10 pieces of candy and you gave me half, that would be 5. Alright, now what do we get if we double 8? Alright, so if you double something, you make it have twice as many. So if you start out with 8 and you double it, you're going to have twice as many, which is 8 plus 8 more, so that'll be 16. Alright, so we want to know the difference between half and double and be able to calculate half of a number and also double a number. Alright, so in your homework you're going to have a chart that you have to fill in, and it's going to look something like this. Alright, and in the first row it's going to say half of a number, and then here it's just going to say the number, and then here it's going to say it's double. So this is the numbers double. Alright, so let's say that our number is 50. Okay, can we figure out what half of 50 is? Well, half of 50 is going to be 25. And can we figure out what its double is? In other words, what is 50 if you double it? Well, that'll be 50 plus 50 more, or 100. Okay, twice as much. Now, what if our number is 140? Can you figure out what half of that is? What's half of 140? Well, that would be 70. And because 70 plus 70 is 140, right? And so what would it be if we doubled 140? Well, that would be 280. 140 plus another 140 would be 280. Alright, let's do one more. What if my number is 210? Let's do the double first. It's a little bit easier actually. What do we get if we double 210? Well, 210 plus 210 is 420. Alright, so how do we figure out what half of 210 is? Well, if I think about 200, half of 200 is 100, and then there's 10 more, so half of that 10 is 5. So half of 210 would be 105. Alright, so you need to be able to do that, and you'll have one of those to do for your homework. Okay, so now I'm going to write a word problem up here, and then we'll talk about how to do it, but I want you to be thinking about that as you're reading it, okay, or as I'm reading it. All right, there are 7 people in the Smith family that went to eat. Kids' meals were $10 each, and 2 parents' meals were $15 each. What was the total cost? Okay, how would we figure that out? Well, we have 7 people in the family, and we know that there are 2 parents, so there's the 2 parents, so that leaves how many kids? You take 2 out of the 7, you'll have 5 kids. So there's actually 2 parents, and there's 5 kids. And that gives you the 7 people, right? Okay, now, so let's figure out how much the cost was for the parents. The parents' meals were $15 each, so since there were 2 parents, that'll be 15 plus 15, or $30 for the parents' food. Now, there were 5 kids, and the kids' meals were $10 each, so if there's 5 kids and each one is $10, that is going to be 5 times 10, or $50 for the kids' meals. So what was the total cost then? Well, it's $30 plus the $50, which equals $80. Alright, so that's how you would go about that one. Now, when you're doing a word problem, you want to write everything down, kind of like I did. So it's helpful if you write down, like when you're figuring out how many parents you have and how many kids you have, if you write that down, and then you can figure out the cost for the parents and the cost for the kids, and then you're going to end up adding those two together. So I wrote the plus sign and the equal sign and then added those up and got 80. Okay, so you want to show your work and you want to write everything down as you're working it out. Okay, don't keep it all in your mind, because when you do a math problem, you have to show what you did, not just give the answer. Alright, so when you're going to have at least one word problem in your homework, so I just wanted to show you an example of how to do that. Okay, now you're also going to have some other problems that look something like what I'm about to show you. Okay, you're going to have a chart, and it's going to look something like this, and you're going to have n and n plus 3. Alright, and then up here at the top you're going to have some numbers, and you have to figure out what goes in the bottom. Okay, so how in the world are we going to do that? Well, we need to look at this part, which is telling us how to figure out what goes in the bottom box. So for the first column here, we're looking at this column, 5 is our n. And so in the bottom box, underneath the 5, we have to put n plus 3. So since our n is 5, we're going to have, for n plus 3, we're going to have 5 plus 3, so this is going to be 8. Alright, now in the next column, now my n is 8, right here. Okay, and so if I'm going to figure out the number that goes in the bottom underneath this 8, I come over here and I know that the bottom number is always n plus 3. So if my n is 8, it's 8 plus 3, which is going to be 11. Alright, now in the next column, my n is 10. So the number that's underneath the 10 is going to be n plus 3. Since n is 10, it's going to be 10 plus 3, so this will be 13. And then in the last column, my n is 30. And so underneath that, I'm going to have n plus 3, or 30 plus 3, so this will be 33. Okay? So every time the top number is the n, and the number underneath it is n, whatever the top number is, plus 3 more. So if you look at all of these, the number at the bottom is always 3 more than the number at the top. Okay? Now this is called the rule. We always go by the same rule for all of the columns, for all the numbers. Alright, so let's look at another one. Okay, let's say we have n, and we have n minus 5. Okay, so, and let's say we have a 10 for n. Alright, so if n is 10, then the number that goes underneath is n minus 5, or 10 minus 5, which in this case would be 5. Alright, now let's say the top number is 12. So now my n is 12. And by the way, n just stands for any number. That's why they use the letter n, because it's the first letter in the word number. So it's just any number. So in this case, my n is 12. And so the number that goes under it is going to be n minus 5, or 12 minus 5. So that'll be 7. Alright, so what if my n is 38? What number is going to go underneath? Well, if my n is 38, then the number underneath will be n minus 5, 38 minus 5, which is 33. And just one more. What if my n is 100? Then the number at the bottom will be 100 minus 5, which is 95. Okay, so again, this is our rule. The number at the top is n, and the number at the bottom is always n, which is the top number, minus 5. So if you look, all the numbers on the bottom are 5 less than the number at the top. Okay? This is our rule that we go by every time. Okay, so let's look at one more example. I want to show you something with that one that we've talked about before that will help you make this a little bit easier. Alright, so we have another chart, and we have another rule. This time we have n, and n plus 99. Okay? Alright, so let's say our top number is 48. Okay, so n is 48. So the bottom number is going to be n plus 99, or 48 plus 99. Now, it's not that easy to add 48 plus 99 in your head, but 99 is really close to 100, isn't it? And so in my mind, I can say, what is 48 plus 100? And that's 148, isn't it? So if I'm going to do 48 plus 99, it's going to be 1 less than 148. See, this is 148, so this will be 1 less, 147, because I'm only adding 99. I'm not adding 100. Alright, let's do another one. Let's say my top number is 73. Alright, now I'm adding 73 plus 99 to get the bottom number. Well, I don't know what 73 plus 99 is, but I can figure out what 73 plus 100 is really easily. That's 173. So what's 73 plus 99? Well, it's going to be one less than that, 172. Okay? So this is what I'm thinking in my mind, and I'm coming up with the answer. Alright, so now, last one, let's say I have 98 for n, and I'm trying to figure out what is n plus 99. In other words, what is 98 plus 99? Okay. So we're going to use the same strategy again. We're going to think about in our mind, instead of 98 plus 99, what's 98 plus 100? Well, that's 198. So 98 plus 99 must be 197. Alright? So, you'll have a few of those to do for homework using, using a rule that's given in the first column. Okay, so let's look at just a couple of more things and we'll be finished for today. Let's say that I told you to do this problem, 56 plus 1,247 plus 931 plus 6,025. Alright, now that's a lot of numbers, and so it might be helpful to write this in a column. Okay, so if we write it in a column, I'm going to do that, but I want you to tell me what's wrong with what I'm about to do. Okay, so if I write the first number, 56, and then I write the second number, 1,247, and then I write 931, and then 6,025, and I'm going to add those. What's wrong with the way that I wrote that? All right. Well, I didn't line up my numbers correctly, did I? All right. I have to remember that I have to remember my place values. And remember, when you have a number, the number on the right is the ones place, and all of those numbers should be in the same column. All right. And then the next number over is the tens, and all of those numbers should be in the same column. All right, etc. So that's not how I write it. What I have to do is I have to write 56, and then when I write 1,247, I have to make sure the 7 is under the 6, and I have to make sure the 4 is under the 5. Oops. So I need to line them up that way. And then 931. Okay, and then 6025. So if I write the numbers correctly in a column, my 6 and my 7 and my 1 and my 5 should all be lined up. Those are all ones. See? And then my 5 and my 4 and my 3 and my 2 should all be lined up because those are all tens. And then I can add those numbers together. Okay? So let me see here. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to add these. Try to erase this first. Okay. Alright, how do we add these numbers together? Well, first we're going to say 6 plus 7 is 13. We're going to keep that in our mind. Plus 1 is 14. Plus 5 is 19. We write down the 9 and carry the 1. Alright, the next we're going to add the 1 plus 5, which is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 3 is 13, plus 2 is 15. Write down the 5, carry a 1. Now we add 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 9 is 12. Write down the 2, carry the 1. And now 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 6 is 8. And my answer is 8,259. Okay? So just remember, when you're writing numbers in columns, you have to remember to line up your place values. All the 1s should be in a column, all the 10s should be in a column, etc. Okay, now, what if we're adding money? Let's say we're adding $230 plus $1.58 plus $75.29. Alright, how do we line that up in a column? Well, notice where your decimal point is, here and here. Alright, and everything to the right of the decimal point is your cents, 29 cents, 58 cents. Alright, now on the $230 over here, there's no cents, it's just $230. And so really, even though it's not written down, there's a decimal point understood to be right here, and then there's 0 cents. Alright, but if you have 0 cents, usually we don't write it down. Alright, but we have to remember that so that when we line up our problem, when we go to write it in a column, that we do that correctly. So we'll write $230, and then we have to know that the decimal point is here, and there's actually 0 cents after it. Alright, then we're going to write $1.58 and line up your decimals. Okay. And then we're going to write $75.29. So notice that all your cents are lined up here. Okay, all your decimal points are lined up. And then the other numbers are lined up as well. So, and there are dollar signs here. We are adding. But we have to make sure that everything is lined up. All the decimal points have to be lined up. All your cents have to be lined up. Then, once those are lined up, you can add. So let me get rid of some of this stuff and we'll add. Okay. Alright. So, we're going to start on the right. And we're going to say 8 plus 9 is 17. Write down the 7. Carry a 1. And then we're going to add that 1 plus the 5. 6 plus 2 is 8. Write your decimal point. And then go to the next column. 0 plus 1 plus 5, that's 6. And then the next column, actually that's a dollar sign there that we don't really need to be there. Okay, so I'm going to write it right here. Alright, so now I have 3 plus 7 is 10. Write down your 0, carry a 1. And then 1 plus 2 is 3. So our answer is $306.87. Okay? So again, remember when you're lining up numbers in columns, you have to make sure that the things that are alike are lined up. Okay? You can't have things that are not alike lined up in a column and add those. You can only add things that are alike. Okay, last little piece of information. There's going to be a problem or a couple of problems in your homework, and in one of them they're going to talk about something where you're going on a trip. Okay, And so let's say that you're going on a trip and you're here, and this is Evans, and you're going to travel to, let's say you're going to travel to Columbia. Alright, and let's say that that is 70 miles. Okay, so if I ask you how far is it from Evans to Columbia, you would say 70 miles. That's called a one-way trip, because you're only going one way. You're going from Evans to Columbia. Now, usually when we go on a trip, though, we go somewhere and then we come back home. So when we do that, in other words, if we go from Evans to Columbia and then we come back, that's called a round trip. It's kind of like a two-way trip, but we just call it a round trip. And so if I asked you how far is a round trip from Evans to Columbia, that means you go from Evans to Columbia and then you come back home to Evans. So that would be 70 plus 70, which is 140 miles. Okay? So what you have to know is when you see round trip, that just means you're going somewhere and you're coming back the same way that you went. Okay? Alright, so for homework, I want you to do pages 12 and 13, and then also review your addition tables again. Make sure that you go over your addition flashcards and pick out the ones that maybe you may have forgotten and study those so that you make sure you know those really well, because you're going to have to know those really well, because we're going to be moving on to much harder things, and so you want to be sure you know your addition. So that's all for today. Have a good day.